So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Hotel Transylvania Universe. So without wasting time, let's start the series. The candlelight flickered across the dining hall, casting long shadows that danced between the monstrous guests like living things. Mavis kept her eyes on her plate, pushing a blood pudding across the porcelain without interest, while her father's voice thundered from the head of the table. And I'm telling you, it's not safe. The forest has felt wrong for 3 nights now. Mavis glanced up. Dracula's usual theatrical confidence had dimmed into something sharper, more alert. His fingers tapped against the arm of his chair, a tell he thought she'd never noticed. You've said that every night this week, father. She kept her voice light. The guests haven't complained. Guests don't notice what they should. Dracula's eyes swept the room, over the Frankenstein family arguing quietly in the corner, over the invisible man's floating fork, over the werewolf pups chasing each other beneath the tables. Something's out there. Something that doesn't belong. Eunice, Frankenstein's wife, leaned across the table. Dracula, darling, you've been wound tighter than Frank's neck bolts since Tuesday. Maybe you just need a vacation from running the vacation spot. I don't need a vacation. I need. The dining hall's massive doors creaked. Not swung open. Not slammed. Just creaked, a sound that cut through every conversation like a blade. Every monster in the room went still. Mavis turned in her seat. The figure in the doorway stood half in shadow, half in firelight. Taller than a human should be, but not as tall as most monsters. His clothes were travel-worn, a dark jacket with torn sleeves, pants caked with mud, boots that had seen too many miles. His hair was the color of sunlight, which was wrong, because sunlight meant danger, sunlight meant. He stepped forward, and the candles caught his face. Young. That was Mavis's first thought. Young and tired, with shadows under eyes that were bluer than any human eyes she'd ever seen. But it was the other details that made her breath catch. The ears. They rose from his blonde hair like twin triangles, furred with orange-red, twitching slightly as he took in the room. And behind him, visible now that he moved away from the doorframe, a tail, thick and bushy and the same orange-red, streaked with darker fur like flames frozen mid-flicker. A fox. No. Not a fox. A person with fox features. A human, someone whispered. Mavis couldn't tell who. The boy's jaw tightened. His ears flattened slightly against his head, a gesture so quick Mavis almost missed it. I'm not. He stopped. Swallowed. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher, carefully controlled. I'm looking for shelter. Just for the night. I can pay. He held up a small pouch that clinked faintly. The monsters stared. Dracula rose from his chair so slowly that Mavis heard the fabric of his cape shift. His face had gone from worried to something else entirely, a cold mask she'd only seen a few times in her life, usually when humans had gotten too close to the hotel's borders. You're not human, Dracula said. It wasn't a question. The boy's tail gave a single twitch. No. Then what are you? A pause. The boy's eyes moved across the room, taking in the werewolves, the vampires, the walking corpse, the blobs, the witches. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a slight hunch, a protective curl. Mavis recognized it. She'd done the same thing 100 times when humans came too close to the hotel's windows. A traveler, the boy said finally. That's not what I asked? I know. The silence stretched. Mavis saw her father's hands curl into fists at his sides, and she found herself standing before she'd consciously decided to move. He's obviously not human, father. Look at him. She walked toward the door, ignoring Dracula's sharp intake of breath. And he's obviously not here to hurt anyone, or he wouldn't have walked through the front door. Mavis. She stopped a few feet from the fox boy. Up close, she could see details she'd missed, the faint whisker marks on his cheeks, the way his pupils contracted slightly when he looked at her, the scars on his hands. He smelled like wood smoke and rain and something else, something wild and warm. I'm Mavis, she said. He blinked. The tension in his shoulders didn't ease, but something in his eyes shifted, surprise maybe. Like he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him directly. Naruto. His voice was softer now. My name's Naruto. Naruto. She tested the sound of it. That's not from around here. No. A ghost of something crossed his face. Amusement? Pain? She couldn't tell. I've been traveling a long time. How long? His ears twitched again. Long enough to forget where I started. Behind them, Dracula cleared his throat. Mavis, perhaps we should discuss this in private before. Before what, father? Before we offer a traveler a meal? She turned to face him, keeping her expression carefully neutral. You've never turned away a monster before. Even the strange ones. He's not just strange. He's… Dracula stopped, his jaw working. Mavis watched him struggle with whatever he'd been about to say, and felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd heard that hesitation before. She'd heard it every time her father talked about humans, about the world outside, about all the things he was afraid of. He's what? She pressed. Different? So are we. So is everyone in this room. The werewolf pups had crept closer, their mother hissing at them to stay back. Frankenstein's monster had risen from his seat, his bride's hand on his arm. Even the invisible man had stopped eating, his floating fork suspended midair. Naruto shifted his weight. I can leave. I didn't mean to cause. No. Mavis surprised herself with how firm she sounded. You came here for shelter. You'll get it. She looked at her father. Won't he? For a long moment, Dracula said nothing. His eyes moved between Mavis and Naruto, and Mavis saw something flicker in them. Worry, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Fine, he said finally. One night. But he sits where I can see him. He gestured to a small table near the head of the dining hall, isolated from the others. And we talk after dinner. Naruto nodded once, a sharp movement that made his ears bounce. Thank you. Mavis led him to the table, aware of every eye in the room following them. When Naruto sat, his tail curled around the chair leg automatically, as if trying to make himself smaller. She noticed he positioned himself with his back to the wall, facing the door. You don't have to stay, he said quietly, as she hesitated beside the table. I know I'm… He gestured vaguely at himself. You're what? Weird. Wrong. Whatever word they use here. His voice was flat, practiced. Like he'd said this so many times it had lost all meaning. Mavis sat down across from him. Try different. That's what we use here. And believe me, compared to some of our guests, you're practically normal. His ears perked slightly. Normal? Last month, we had a guest who was literally just a sentient pile of moss. Took us 3 days to figure out how to feed him. She smiled, and was surprised to find it felt natural. You're way easier. You eat regular food, right? Yes. I eat regular food. Good. I'll have the kitchen bring something. She started to rise, then paused. Naruto? For what it's worth, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're just from somewhere else. She walked away before he could respond, but she caught the way his tail unwound slightly from the chair leg, the way his shoulders dropped just a fraction. Small things. But she'd learned to read small things, growing up in a hotel full of monsters who hid their feelings behind centuries of practice. At the head table, her father was watching them both with an expression she couldn't read. Dinner proceeded in fits and starts. The other monsters tried to pretend nothing had happened, but the energy in the room had shifted. Conversations were quieter. Glances toward Naruto's table were frequent. Mavis ate mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She kept stealing looks at the foxboy, Naruto, watching the way he ate with careful, precise movements, like someone who'd learned not to draw attention to himself. He didn't look around the room the way most newcomers did. He didn't gawk at the floating candles or the talking portraits, or the werewolf pups chasing each other in circles. He just ate, methodically, his eyes on his plate. You're staring. Mavis jumped. Her father had slid into the seat beside her without her noticing. I'm observing, she corrected. You're the one who taught me to read guests. I taught you to read guests. Not to get involved with mysterious strangers who walk through the front door uninvited. Dracula's voice was low, meant only for her. Mavis, I need you to understand something. That boy, whatever he is, he's dangerous. He hasn't done anything dangerous. Not yet. Dracula's eyes tracked across the room to Naruto's table. But look at him. Really look. He moves like a fighter. He sits with his back to the wall. He didn't react to any of the monsters in this room, which means he's either seen stranger things or he's very good at hiding fear. And those ears, they're not just for show. He's listening to everything. Probably hearing every word we're saying. Mavis frowned. So he's alert. That's not a crime. It's not. But it's also not normal for someone who's supposedly just a lost traveler. Dracula turned to face her fully. I'm not saying he's evil. I'm saying we don't know what he is. And in 500 years, I've learned that unknown things usually mean trouble. Or they just mean unknown. Mavis pushed her plate away. Father, you've spent my whole life telling me humans are dangerous. That the outside world is dangerous. That everything beyond these walls wants to hurt us. And now a monster, a real, obvious monster, shows up, and you're treating him the same way. Because he's not just a monster. He's something I've never seen before. Something that shouldn't exist. How do you know what should and shouldn't exist? You've barely left this hotel in a century. The words hung between them. Mavis saw her father's face tighten, saw the argument forming on his lips, and for a moment she thought they were about to have the same fight they'd had 100 times before. But then a scream cut through the dining hall. It came from the kitchens, high and sharp and terrified. Mavis was on her feet before she processed the sound, her father's hand grabbing her arm, pulling her back. Stay here. Father! Stay. He was gone in a blur of motion, capes streaming behind him. Other monsters were rising, some moving toward the kitchens, others backing away. The werewolf mother gathered her pups, herding them toward the exit. Frankenstein's monster positioned himself in front of his wife. Mavis stood frozen, caught between obedience and the need to know. And then she saw Naruto. He hadn't moved from his table. But his body had gone completely still, his ears swiveled toward the kitchens, his nostrils flared. His tail was rigid behind him. For a moment, he looked less like a lost traveler and more like a predator sensing prey. Then his eyes met hers across the room. Stay here, he said. The words were the same as her father's, but his voice was different, calmer, somehow. Certain. I'll check. Before she could respond, he was moving, not with vampire speed, but with a fluid grace that carried him silently across the dining hall and through the kitchen doors. Mavis counted to 10. Then she followed. The kitchen was chaos. Not the kind of chaos Mavis had imagined, no monsters fighting, no obvious threat. Just chaos. Pots scattered on the floor. A overturned table. And in the corner, huddled against the wall, a young witch in training named Wendy, sobbing uncontrollably. But it was what stood in the center of the room that made Mavis freeze. Naruto stood with his back to her, his body angled protectively between Wendy and something. Mavis couldn't see what it was at first, just a shimmer in the air, a distortion like heat rising from summer stones. But as she watched, the shimmer solidified, took shape, became a spirit. She'd seen spirits before. The hotel had its share of ghosts, specters, wandering souls. But this was different. This was old, ancient in a way that made her skin crawl. It had no clear form, just a mass of writhing shadows and glowing eyes, too many eyes, all fixed on Naruto with an intensity that felt almost hungry. You shouldn't be here, Naruto said. His voice was different now, deeper, resonant, layered with something that made the hairs on Mavis's arms stand up. This is a place of safety. You don't belong. The spirit made a sound. Not words, exactly, but Mavis understood it anyway, a challenge, a threat, a claiming. Naruto's ears flattened. His tail bristled behind him. And then... fire. Not the kitchen's cooking fires, but something else. Blue flame flickered around Naruto's hands, casting strange shadows across the walls. It didn't burn him, didn't even seem to warm the air around him. But the spirit screamed, a sound that went through Mavis like ice, and recoiled. Go back, Naruto said. The flames grew brighter. Go back where you came from. This isn't your place. The spirit screamed again. For a moment, it surged forward, and Mavis saw something in its mass of shadows, a face, maybe, or just the suggestion of a face, twisted with rage and hunger. Then Naruto moved. Not toward the spirit. Not away. Just moved, one step to the side, and suddenly the flames around his hands weren't just flames anymore. They were shapes, foxes, made of blue fire, leaping from his palms toward the spirit with silent snarls. The spirit dissolved. Not fought, not defeated, just unmade, the shadows scattering like fog in sunlight, the eyes winking out one by one until nothing remained but the cold kitchen air and the sound of Wendy's sobbing. Naruto stood still for a long moment. The flames died. His shoulders sagged. Then he turned and saw Mavis in the doorway. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other. Mavis saw the exhaustion in his face, the way his ears drooped, the slight tremor in his hands. She also saw the wariness, the way his eyes flicked past her to check for others, the way his tail curled slightly, not aggressive, just guarded. Wendy, Mavis said, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. She moved past Naruto to kneel beside the young witch. Wendy, are you okay? What happened? Wendy looked up with tear-streaked cheeks. It came from the pantry. Just appeared. It was so cold, Mavis, and it kept saying things I couldn't understand, and I couldn't move, I couldn't. It's gone now. Mavis pulled her into a hug, feeling the girl shake against her. You're safe. It's gone. Behind her, she heard the kitchen door swing open again, and her father's voice. What in the name of? The room went silent. Mavis looked over her shoulder to find Dracula standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Naruto with an expression she couldn't name. Behind him, other monsters crowded, trying to see. Naruto stood very still. His hands, Mavis noticed, had curled into fists at his sides. Everyone out, Dracula said quietly. Now. But father. Now, Mavis. She hesitated, looking from her father's face to Naruto's. Naruto met her eyes for a moment, and she saw something there, a plea, maybe, or a warning. Then he looked away, his expression shuddering. Mavis helped Wendy to her feet and guided her toward the door. As she passed Naruto, she paused. That was brave, she whispered. What you did? He didn't respond. But she saw his ears twitch, and that was enough. The kitchen emptied slowly, monsters shuffling out with whispered questions and frightened looks. Mavis lingered in the doorway, watching as her father approached Naruto with careful, measured steps. That spirit, Dracula said. It was bound to the hotel. I've felt it for years, lurking in the corners, never strong enough to manifest. Tonight it did. Why? Naruto's jaw tightened. I don't know. You don't know, or you won't say? Both. Naruto met Dracula's gaze. I've been traveling for a long time. Things follow me sometimes. Spirits, mostly. They're drawn to. He stopped. His tail twitched. They're drawn to what I am. And what are you? The question hung in the air. Mavis held her breath. Naruto was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost tired. I'm a kitsune. A fox spirit. From a country far east of here. In my homeland, we're not common, but we're known. Here, I don't think you have anything like me. A fox spirit. Dracula's tone was neutral, but Mavis could see the calculation behind his eyes. I've heard stories. Tricksters. Shapeshifters. Firebringers. Some of us, yes. Naruto's ears flattened slightly. I'm not a trickster. I don't play games with people. I just exist. And apparently, that's enough to draw unwanted attention. The spirit. It came because of you? Maybe. Probably. Naruto's hands uncurled, then curled again. I told you I'd bring trouble. I didn't mean to, but... He shrugged, a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of years. It's what happens. Everywhere I go, eventually, something follows. Mavis stepped forward before she could stop herself. That's not fair. You saved Wendy. Whatever followed you, you handled it. Both of them turned to look at her. Naruto's expression was unreadable, but her father's was not. He looked frustrated, worried, and something else. Something that might have been fear. Mavis, I asked you to leave. I know. She walked further into the kitchen, stopping beside Naruto. Not touching him, but close. But I'm not a child anymore, father. And I'm tired of being protected from things I don't understand. This isn't about protection. It's about... About what? She met his eyes. About the fact that he's different. About the fact that you don't know what he is, so you're scared. That's what you've always done. Fear the unknown. Hide from it. Teach me to do the same. Dracula's face went very still. That's not... It is. You know it is. Mavis felt her heart pounding, but she didn't look away. I'm not saying we should trust him blindly. I'm not saying there aren't questions to ask. But he just saved one of our own, and the first thing you did was clear the room and corner him alone. For a long moment, no one spoke. The kitchen felt cold without the spirit's presence, the scattered pots and overturned table the only evidence anything had happened. Then Naruto moved. He stepped back from both of them, putting distance between himself and the argument. I should go. I've caused enough trouble for one night. No. Mavis and her father spoke at the same time, then looked at each other in surprise. Dracula recovered first. You can't leave now. That spirit, if it was drawn here, others might be too. And if you're right about things following you, then walking out into the night is just asking for more problems. You want me to stay? Naruto's voice held genuine confusion. After everything. I want you to stay where I can see you. Dracula's eyes narrowed. Where I can figure out what you are and what you've brought to my hotel. And where, if more spirits show up, you can deal with them before they hurt my guests. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't even trust. But it was something, a stay of execution at least. Naruto seemed to recognize that. Fine, he said quietly. I'll stay. But I'm not hiding in a room. If I'm going to be watched, I'd rather be watched in the open. Dracula considered this, then nodded slowly. Agreed. You'll have a room, but you'll take your meals in the dining hall. And you'll answer my questions, all of them, when I ask. Father, Mavis started. It's fine. Naruto's voice held a resignation that made something twist in her chest. I'm used to questions. Used to being watched. He looked at her, and for a moment his expression softened, just slightly. Thank you for speaking up. Most people don't. Before she could respond, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Mavis alone with her father and the wreckage of the night. Later, long after the kitchen had been cleaned and the guests reassured and Wendy comforted, Mavis stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the dark forest that surrounded the hotel. Somewhere out there, Naruto had traveled from. Somewhere far away, across lands she'd never seen, through dangers she couldn't imagine. He'd walked into her father's hotel looking for shelter, and instead he'd found suspicion, fear, and a spirit that should never have been able to manifest. And he'd handled it. Not with bravado or showmanship, but with quiet competence and strange blue fire. She thought about the way his ears had flattened when the other monsters whispered. Human. The way his tail had curled protectively around the chair leg. The way he told her to stay, not as a command, but as a warning, like he'd known something dangerous was coming and wanted her safe. Her father was right about one thing, Naruto was dangerous. But not in the way Dracula feared. Not dangerous to them. Dangerous for them, for the careful walls they built, the comfortable fears they'd nurtured, the simple story of monsters good, humans bad. That had defined her entire life. Because Naruto wasn't human. But he wasn't quite monster either, at least not in any way Mavis understood. He was something between, something that didn't fit neatly into any category. Something like her. The thought came unbidden, and Mavis pushed it away quickly. She wasn't between anything. She was a vampire, daughter of Dracula, heir to Hotel Transylvania. She knew exactly what she was. But as she climbed into bed and closed her eyes, she couldn't stop seeing those blue flames, or the exhaustion in Naruto's face when he thought no one was watching, or the way he'd said, "Most people don't." Like it was a fact of life, like he'd stopped expecting anything else. Somewhere in the hotel, in a room she'd never visited, a foxboy from another land was probably lying awake too, listening for spirits, waiting for the next thing to follow him out of the darkness. Mavis made a decision. Tomorrow, she would find him. Not because her father asked her to watch him, and not because she was curious about his powers. But because he looked at her like she was the first person in a long time to see him as something other than a threat. And she knew what that felt like. Morning light never reached the interior rooms of Hotel Transylvania. Centuries of careful design ensured that vampires could move freely at any hour, that werewolves wouldn't accidentally transform during breakfast, that every monster could exist without the constant threat of sunlight burning through windows. The hotel breathed darkness like a living thing, and its guests breathed with it. Naruto had not slept. He'd found the bed comfortable enough, soft in ways that reminded him of inns from years past, from countries he'd already forgotten the names of. But comfort didn't matter when every shadow seemed to move, when every creak of settling stone made his ears swivel toward the door, when the memory of that spirit's countless eyes still crawled across his skin. He'd dealt with worse. Much worse. But dealing with something and sleeping afterward were two different skills, and he'd never quite mastered the second. Now he sat on the edge of the bed, watching the door, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt safe enough to close his eyes for more than an hour. Weeks? Months? The timeline blurred after a while, one town blending into another, one forest into the next. A knock at the door made his ears snap forward. Breakfast in 30 minutes. The voice was muffled, professional, one of the hotel staff, not the vampire girl from last night. Mr. Dracula requests your presence in the dining hall. Naruto waited until he heard footsteps retreating before standing. His tail ached from the position he'd slept in, curled around himself like a shield, and he took a moment to stretch, working out the stiffness. In the small mirror above the dresser, his reflection showed him what he already knew, dark circles under blue eyes, whisker marks more prominent than usual, ears slightly drooped with exhaustion. He looked like hell. Which, given where he was, felt almost appropriate. The halls of Hotel Transylvania were a maze of Gothic arches and flickering sconces, designed to disorient anyone who didn't belong. Naruto followed the sounds of activity, distant conversation, clinking dishes, the patter of small running feet, and tried not to flinch every time a portrait's eyes followed him. By the time he reached the dining hall, most of the guests had already gathered. The same monsters from last night, plus a few new faces, a group of green-skinned creatures arguing over a newspaper, a woman whose lower half dissolved into mist, a creature that appeared to be nothing but a floating top hat. Naruto took them all in with quick glances, cataloging, assessing, the habit too ingrained to break. "He's here." The whisper came from somewhere to his left. "The fox thing." Naruto's ears flattened. He kept walking. The table from last night had been prepared for him, same isolated position near the head of the hall, same clear sight lines to every exit. Dracula sat at the main table, watching him approach with an expression that gave nothing away. The vampire girl, Mavis, was beside him, and Naruto noticed she looked tired too, like she hadn't slept well either. "Morning," she said as he sat down. Not loud, not drawing attention, just a simple greeting that somehow felt more genuine than anything else in the room. "Morning." He kept his voice low. "You didn't have to save my seat." "I didn't. The staff did." She smiled slightly. "I just happened to be here already." A lie, and not a very good one. Naruto's nose caught the faint scent of her, night air and something floral, and he could tell she'd been sitting here for a while, long enough for the smell to settle into the chair. But he didn't call her on it. Lies given kindly were still kind. Food arrived. Simple things, bread, meat, something that looked like eggs but had a faint purple sheen. Naruto ate mechanically, aware of Mavis's occasional glances, aware of Dracula's constant surveillance, aware of the way conversations around them seemed to quiet whenever he reached for his glass. "Ignore them," Mavis said quietly. "They're not used to new things." "I'm used to being ignored." He took another bite. "Or watched. Depends on the crowd." "Which do you prefer?" He considered the question. No one had ever asked him that before. "Watched, I guess. At least then I know where the danger is." Mavis was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Is that why you sit with your back to the wall?" Naruto's ears twitched. He hadn't realized she'd noticed. "Habit. A bad habit, or a useful one?" "Both." He set down his fork. "Look, I appreciate the conversation. I do. But you don't have to." He gestured vaguely. "Whatever this is, I'm not your responsibility." "I know." Mavis met his eyes. "But you're also not my enemy. And I'd like to know more about someone who's staying in my father's hotel. Is that so strange?" Everything about this was strange. The kindness, the curiosity, the lack of fear in her expression, these weren't things Naruto had experienced often. Not from humans, who saw his ears and tail and reached for torches. Not from monsters, who sensed his difference and kept their distance. Not from anyone, really, except maybe the occasional traveling companion who stayed long enough to realize what followed him, and then left. "No," he said finally. "It's not strange. It's just unexpected." Mavis smiled again, wider this time. "Good. I like being unexpected." Breakfast passed without incident. Naruto answered Mavis's questions where he could, where he came from, vague, how long he'd been traveling, years, what he'd seen, too much. He deflected where he needed to, why he'd left his homeland, complicated, whether he had family, no, what he was looking for, silence. Through it all, Dracula watched from his table, and Naruto felt those ancient eyes like weights on his skin. After the meal, as guests dispersed to their various activities, Mavis stood. "I have to help with preparations for the talent show tonight. But if you want..." She hesitated. "If you want somewhere quiet to be, there's a garden. North wing through the glass doors. Most monsters don't go there. Too much indirect light." Naruto blinked. "You're giving me directions to a garden." "I'm giving you directions to somewhere you won't be stared at." She shrugged. "Take it or leave it." She left before he could respond, disappearing into the crowd of monsters with a confidence that spoke of decades of practice. Naruto watched her go, something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. Gratitude. That's what it was. Unfamiliar and uncomfortable and entirely unwelcome. He found the garden anyway. The North Wing garden was nothing like what Naruto had expected. Instead of the dark, shadowed plants he'd imagined, this place was almost painfully bright, not with direct sunlight, but with a filtered glow that came from somewhere above, diffused through layers of enchanted glass until it became something soft and golden. Plants grew in wild profusion, spilling over stone paths and climbing ancient walls. Flowers he couldn't name opened their petals to the warmth, their colors richer than anything in the forests he'd crossed. And he was alone. For the first time in days, weeks, maybe, Naruto let himself breathe. He found a stone bench near the garden center, half hidden by flowering vines, and sat. His tail uncurled from its protective position, spreading across the bench behind him like a banner of surrender. His ears, still swiveling automatically at every sound, gradually relaxed as the garden proved itself empty of threats. Peace. Real peace. He'd forgotten what it felt like. The afternoon passed in fragments of awareness. Naruto dozed, woke, dozed again, never quite sleeping, never quite alert, existing in the gray space between. The garden's warmth soaked into his bones. The scent of unfamiliar flowers filled his nose. For a few hours, he almost felt like something other than a wanderer. Then footsteps crunched on the stone path, and he was awake instantly, ears forward, body tensed. Mavis stopped a few feet away, hands raised slightly. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. You didn't. Naruto forced his shoulders to relax. I was just resting. Right. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. I brought food. Dinner's in an hour, but I thought you might want something before facing the crowd again. She held out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Naruto took it automatically, surprised by the warmth seeping through. You didn't have to. I know. She sat on the opposite end of the bench, leaving space between them. But I wanted to check on you. Make sure you found the garden okay. Naruto unwrapped the bundle. Bread, cheese, some kind of dried meat. Simple food, but fresh. He hadn't had fresh food in weeks. Thank you. You're welcome. Mavis pulled her knees up onto the bench, wrapping her arms around them. In the filtered light, she looked younger than she had at dinner, less like the vampire princess, more like someone who also knew what it felt like to be watched. Can I ask you something? You can ask. Why did you come here? To Transylvania, I mean. It's not exactly on the way to anywhere. Naruto considered the question while he ate. It deserved a real answer, he decided. She'd earned that much. I was following something. A spirit, maybe. Or just a feeling. Hard to explain. He chewed slowly, gathering words. In my homeland, kitsune have connections. To places, to people, to things that aren't quite solid. Sometimes those connections pull us in directions we don't understand. And you felt pulled here? I felt pulled somewhere. This just happened to be where I ended up. He looked around the garden, at the impossible flowers and the filtered light. It's not the worst place I've landed. Mavis smiled. High praise. I've slept in caves. And once, in a tree that turned out to be inhabited by very angry squirrels. His tail twitched at the memory. This is better. She laughed, a real laugh, not the polite sound she'd used at dinner. It changed her face, made her look lighter. Angry squirrels? They built a nest in my tail while I was sleeping. Woke up covered in them. Naruto found himself smiling slightly. Took 3 days to get all the scratches to heal. That's... Mavis shook her head, still laughing. That's ridiculous. Traveling is ridiculous. You learn to expect the unexpected. He took another bite of bread. Or you go crazy. Sometimes both. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the garden's quiet wrapping around them like a blanket. Naruto finished his food, aware of Mavis's presence beside him but not threatened by it. She asked occasional questions, about his travels, about places he'd seen, and he answered when he could, deflected when he couldn't. It felt almost normal. Almost like conversation between people who might, under different circumstances, have been friends. Then Mavis asked, What happened to your family? Naruto went still. The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating. Mavis seemed to realize her mistake immediately, her eyes widening. I'm sorry. You don't have to answer. I shouldn't have. It's fine. The words came out flat. Naruto stared at a point in the middle distance, seeing nothing. It's a normal question. People always want to know. You don't have to tell me. No. He took a breath. But you've been kind to me. More than kind. So maybe you should know what you're being kind to. Mavis was quiet. Waiting. Naruto's tail curled slowly around himself, a protective gesture he couldn't control. I never knew my parents. I was found as a kid, alone, in the woods near a village. A human village. His voice stayed even, practiced. The humans took me in. Raised me. Or tried to. He paused. The memories were old, worn smooth by years of repetition, but they still cut if he looked at them wrong. They didn't know what I was at first. Thought I was just a strange-looking child. But as I got older, he touched one of his ears. These became harder to hide. The tail too. And other things. Things I couldn't control. Your powers, Mavis said softly. My nature. Naruto shook his head. Kitsune aren't human. We can't pretend to be, not forever. The humans who raised me, they tried to protect me. Kept me inside, covered me with blankets, told me to stay quiet when strangers came. But word spreads. Fear spreads faster. He remembered fragments. Angry faces at the door. voices shouting words he didn't understand but felt in his bones. The woman who'd raised him, he couldn't remember her name anymore, just her hands, rough from work but gentle when she brushed his hair, standing in front of him, telling him to run. I left before they could hurt her. Before they could hurt anyone because of me. Naruto's hands had curled into fists in his lap. He made them relax, one finger at a time. I've been leaving ever since. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. Mavis sat motionless beside him, and Naruto braced himself for the pity, the awkward comfort, the eventual retreat that always came after stories like this. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. That's not your fault. I know. He did know, intellectually. It didn't change anything. And the people who raised you, they chose to protect you. That was their choice. You didn't make them do anything. Naruto looked at her. Really looked. She met his gaze without flinching, and he saw something in her eyes that surprised him. Not pity. Recognition. You understand, he said. It wasn't a question. I understand what it's like to be protected from things you didn't ask for. Mavis glanced away, toward the garden's filtered light. My father's kept me in this hotel my whole life. Told me the outside world is dangerous. Told me humans would hurt me if they knew what I was. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He means well. I know he means well. But sometimes I wonder if the protection is worse than the danger. Is it? I don't know. I've never been given the chance to find out. She looked back at him. You have. You've seen the world, even the parts that hurt. Do you regret it? Naruto thought about it. Thought about the caves and the forests, and the angry squirrels. Thought about the spirits that followed him and the humans who'd thrown stones and the loneliness that had become as familiar as breathing. Thought about the garden, and the food, and the vampire girl who'd asked him questions like she actually wanted to know the answers. No, he said. I don't regret it. Mavis smiled. It was a small thing, barely a curve of her lips, but it reached her eyes. Good. That's good. They sat together as the filtered light shifted, as the garden grew dimmer, as somewhere in the hotel a bell rang to signal the approaching evening. When Mavis finally stood, brushing off her dress, she paused. The talent show starts in an hour. You don't have to come, but... She hesitated. If you want to see what monsters do for fun, it might be worth watching. Naruto considered. The idea of walking back into that dining hall, of feeling all those eyes on him again, made something in his chest tighten. But the idea of staying here, alone in the dark, wasn't much better. I'll think about it, he said. Mavis nodded. Fair enough. She started down the path, then stopped. Naruto? For what it's worth, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're just someone who's been through wrong things. She left before he could respond. Naruto sat in the garden for a long time after that, watching the light fade, feeling something in his chest that he couldn't name. The talent show was in full swing by the time Naruto found his way to the dining hall. The tables had been pushed against the walls to create an open space in the center, where a series of monsters were taking turns displaying their abilities. A group of imps juggled flames while a witch cackled appreciatively nearby. Frankenstein's monster was attempting to lift his wife with one arm while she pretended to be impressed. The werewolf pups were doing something that involved a lot of running and yipping and knocking things over. Naruto stood in the doorway, half hidden by shadow, and watched. Mavis was near the front, sitting with a group of younger monsters who kept nudging each other and pointing at the performers. She laughed at something, a genuine laugh, like the one in the garden, and Naruto felt something twist in his chest again. She belonged here. That was obvious in every line of her body, in the way she leaned into the people around her, in the ease of her smile. He didn't belong anywhere. He'd known that for years. But watching her, he felt the knowledge more acutely than usual. You're lurking. Naruto's ears snapped back. Dracula stood beside him, having appeared without a sound. The vampire's eyes were fixed on the show, his expression carefully neutral. I'm watching, Naruto corrected. Same thing when you do it. Dracula glanced at him sideways. You move like someone who's spent a lot of time in shadows. I've spent a lot of time everywhere. Dracula was quiet for a moment. The imps finished their juggling to scattered applause. My daughter seems to like you. Naruto's tail stilled. She's been kind. Kindness and liking aren't the same thing. Dracula turned to face him fully, and Naruto felt the weight of those ancient eyes like a physical pressure. She doesn't have many friends her own age. Monsters live a long time, and the young ones are rare. She gets lonely. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Dracula's voice held no accusation, just curiosity. Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? Naruto met his gaze. I don't know what you want to hear. I don't know you. But I know loneliness. I've lived it for years. So yes, I'm sorry she feels it too. No one should. Something flickered in Dracula's expression. Too fast to read, gone before Naruto could identify it. You're an unusual creature, fox spirit. So I've been told. I meant it as a compliment. Naruto blinked. Did you? Dracula's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. I'm not sure yet. But I'm considering it. He turned back to the show, where a ghost was attempting to sing and failing spectacularly. You can stay if you want. Watch from the shadows if that's more comfortable. But lurking makes people nervous. At some point, you'll have to decide whether you're a guest or a threat. He walked away before Naruto could respond, merging smoothly into the crowd of monsters. Naruto stood in the doorway for a long moment, processing. Then, slowly, he stepped out of the shadows and into the edge of the light. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of performances and noise. Naruto found a spot against the wall, away from the main crowd but visible enough that no one could accuse him of lurking. Monsters glanced at him occasionally, but most were too absorbed in the show to pay him much attention. Mavis found him during a break between acts. You came. She sounded pleased. I came. He shrugged. The garden got dark. It does that. She leaned against the wall beside him, close enough that he could smell her again, night air and flowers. What do you think of monster talent? It's loud. She laughed. That's fair. It's always loud. My father says it's because monsters have centuries of energy to burn off. Makes sense. Naruto watched a group of witches setting up some kind of elaborate potion demonstration. Do you ever perform? Me? Mavis looked surprised. No. I just watch. Why? She considered the question. I guess. I've never been sure what my talent is. Turning into a bat? That's not special, every vampire can do that. Flying? Same problem. She shrugged. I'm just Mavis. Not particularly talented at anything. Naruto looked at her. Really looked, the way he had in the garden. That's not true. How would you know? You've known me for a day. I know you came to check on me this morning. I know you brought me food when you didn't have to. I know you sat with me in the garden and asked questions because you actually wanted answers, not because you were being polite. He met her eyes. Those are talents. Just not the flashy kind. Mavis stared at him. For a moment, she looked almost vulnerable, the same expression he'd seen on his own face in mirrors, when he forgot to guard himself. No one's ever said that to me before, she said quietly. Then no one's been paying attention. Naruto looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. That's their loss. They stood together in silence as the potion demonstration began, filling the air with colorful smoke. Mavis didn't move away, and Naruto didn't either. It felt natural. Like two people who understood something about each other without needing to say it. When the show ended and monsters began drifting toward their rooms, Mavis touched his arm lightly. Same time tomorrow? In the garden? Naruto's ears perked despite himself. You want to meet again? I want to talk again. She smiled. If that's okay with you. He thought about it. Thought about the weight of her father's eyes, the whispers of other monsters, the danger of getting attached to anyone in a world that kept taking things away. Yes, he said. It's okay. Mavis's smile widened. Good. Tomorrow, then. She disappeared into the crowd, and Naruto stood alone in the emptying hall, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Small and fragile and terrifying. He went back to his room and, for the first time since arriving, slept without dreaming of spirits. 3 days passed in a pattern that felt almost like routine. Mornings, Naruto ate breakfast in the dining hall, enduring the stares and whispers with practiced indifference. Mavis usually joined him for at least part of the meal, asking questions or simply sitting in comfortable silence while he ate. Afternoons, he retreated to the garden, where the filtered light and quiet allowed him to lower his guard enough to truly rest. Evenings brought more meals, more stares, and the occasional conversation with Dracula, brief, guarded exchanges that felt like negotiations more than discussions. And every night, after the hotel grew quiet, Naruto walked the halls. Not because he wanted to. Not because he was looking for anything. But because the spirits that followed him didn't rest, and if one manifested while guests were sleeping, someone could get hurt. So he walked, listening with his two sensitive ears, watching with eyes that could see in near darkness, waiting for the telltale chill that meant something from the other side had broken through. On the third night, something finally happened. It started as a whisper. Naruto was in the east wing, 3 floors above the garden, when his ears caught a sound that didn't belong. Not footsteps, not settling stone, not the distant murmur of dreaming monsters. Something else. Something that slipped between the normal noises of the hotel like smoke through cracks in a wall. He stopped walking. Listened. The whisper came again, faint, directionless, almost beneath hearing. But Naruto's senses had been sharpened by years of running from things that whispered, and he caught the words hidden in the sound. Hungry, so hungry, why won't they see me? His tail bristled. The temperature in the corridor had dropped several degrees. Show yourself, he said quietly. I know you're here. For a moment, nothing. Then the air in front of him shimmered, and a shape began to form, not the mass of eyes from the kitchen, but something else. Smaller. More defined. A girl. She looked young, maybe 12 or 13, with pale skin and dark hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. Her dress was old-fashioned, something from centuries past, with torn lace and faded embroidery. She stood in the middle of the corridor, staring at Naruto with eyes that were completely white. You can see me, she said. Her voice was the whisper, made solid. You can hear me. I can. Naruto kept his posture relaxed, though every instinct screamed at him to summon flames. What's your name? The ghost girl tilted her head. No one's asked me that in. I don't remember. A long time. My name's Naruto. What's yours? A long pause. The ghost girl's form flickered, becoming briefly transparent before solidifying again. Eliza. I was Eliza. Before. Before what? Before I died. She said it simply, without emotion. In this hotel. A long time ago. I got lost in the walls and couldn't find my way out, and then I got tired, and then I fell asleep, and then I woke up and everyone was gone and I couldn't leave. Her white eyes fixed on him. I've been here ever since. Walking. Waiting. No one sees me. Naruto's chest tightened. He knew that feeling, the invisibility, the loneliness, the endless waiting for someone to notice you existed. I see you now. Yes. Eliza drifted closer. The temperature dropped further. You're not like the others. You're warm. Why are you warm? I'm a kitsune. Fox spirit. We burn differently than most. Burn. She repeated the word like she was tasting it. I haven't felt warm in so long. Can I feel your fire? Just a little? I won't hurt it. I promise. Naruto hesitated. Letting a ghost near his flames was dangerous. Spirits could be unpredictable, and if Eliza tried to take more than he offered, she could hurt them both. But the longing in her voice was so familiar, so raw, that he couldn't say no. Just a little, he said. And you have to promise to pull back if it hurts. I promise. Naruto extended his hand, palm up, and called a small flame to life. It flickered blue in the darkness of the corridor, casting strange shadows across the walls. Eliza stared at it with something like wonder. Then she reached out one translucent hand and touched the flame. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Eliza gasped, and her form solidified, not completely, but enough that Naruto could see details he'd missed before. The freckles across her nose, the small scar on her chin, the way her eyes, when they flickered brown for just an instant, held a spark of life. It's warm, she breathed. It's actually warm. I'd forgotten what warm felt like. Naruto smiled. It felt strange on his face, but genuine. Keep it. As long as you need. Eliza looked up at him, and for the first time, her expression held something other than emptiness. Thank you? No one's ever given me anything before. Not since I died. You deserve things too. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you stop deserving. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled, a real smile, small and uncertain but real. You're nice. For a fox. I try. They stood together in the corridor, Ghost Girl and Fox Spirit, while the blue flame flickered between them. Naruto felt the drain of maintaining the fire, but he also felt something else, a rightness, a warmth that had nothing to do with magic. This was why he kept going. These small moments of connection, of giving something to someone who had nothing. Then Eliza's head snapped toward the far end of the corridor. Something's coming, she whispered. Something bad. Naruto's flames extinguished instantly. He pulled Eliza behind him, ears swiveled forward, senses straining. What kind of bad? The kind that eats ghosts. Her voice had gone tiny, frightened. It's been here before. It tried to eat me once, but I hid. It's why I stay in the walls. It's why I never come out. Naruto's tail bristled. What does it look like? Shadows. Eyes. Too many eyes. Eliza's form flickered violently. It's here. The temperature plummeted. Naruto felt it before he saw it, a cold so deep it seemed to reach into his bones, into his soul, trying to freeze something fundamental. Then the shadows at the end of the corridor began to move, to writhe, to solidify into something with too many angles and a hunger that pressed against his skin like a physical weight. The spirit from the kitchen. The one with countless eyes. It had found him again. You! Naruto breathed. The spirit made that sound again, not words, but meaning. Hunger. Recognition. Claiming. It had marked him as prey, as something it wanted, and it wouldn't stop until it had him, or he destroyed it. Eliza whimpered behind him. It wants you. It's always wanted something, but I couldn't see what. Now I can. It wants you. Get back! Naruto pushed her further down the corridor. Hide in the walls. Don't come out until I call you. But... Go. She went, dissolving into the stone like smoke into air. Naruto turned to face the spirit alone. It had grown since the kitchen. That was his first thought. It was larger now, more solid, the eyes more numerous and more focused. They all stared at him with the same hungry intensity, and Naruto felt something he hadn't felt in years, true fear. Not for himself. For the hotel. For the monsters sleeping in their beds. For Mavis, who'd been kind to him when she didn't have to be. He couldn't let this thing reach them. You want me? Naruto's voice came out steady, though his hands were shaking. Then come and get me. But not here. Somewhere else. The spirit paused. The eyes blinked, hundreds of them, out of sync. There's a garden. North wing. Through the glass doors. Naruto started walking backward, keeping his eyes on the spirit. Follow me. I'll give you what you want. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and ran. Behind him, the spirit screamed and followed. The garden at night was different from the garden during the day. Without the filtered light, the plants seemed to shrink in on themselves, their colors fading to gray. The air was colder, sharper, and the stone paths glistened with dew that hadn't been there hours ago. Naruto ran through it all, his bare feet silent on the stones, his breath coming in controlled gasps. He stopped at the garden's center, where the stone bench sat half hidden by vines. This was where he'd felt safe. This was where he'd tell the spirit it couldn't have. It emerged from between the plants like smoke from a fire, coalescing into that mass of shadows and eyes. Larger now. Hungrier. The eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. You want me? Naruto said. Why? The spirit's answer wasn't words, but he understood anyway. Different. Bright. Burning. Want. I'm not yours to want. Take. Consume. Become. No. Naruto's hands began to glow, blue flame flickering to life around his fingers. I've been running from things like you my whole life. Things that want to take from me, to use me, to make me something I'm not. It ends tonight. The spirit laughed. It was the worst sound Naruto had ever heard, 1,000 voices twisted into one, mocking and hungry and utterly certain. Then it attacked. The fight was unlike anything Naruto had experienced before. He'd fought spirits before. Dozens of them, across years of wandering. But this one was different, older, stronger, more patient. It didn't just lash out, it probed, testing his defenses, looking for weaknesses. Every time he drove it back with flames, it retreated and came at him from another angle. Every time he thought he'd found an opening, it shifted, reformed, became something else. Minutes passed. Hours. Naruto lost track of time, lost track of everything except the burning need to keep fighting, to keep the spirit contained, to keep it away from the hotel. His flames flickered. He was getting tired. Too tired. The spirit noticed and pressed harder, its eyes gleaming with triumph. Weak, it seemed to say. Tiring. Almost done. No. Naruto forced more fire from his hands. Not done. Not ever. But his body was betraying him. The overuse of his powers was taking its toll. His vision blurred, his limbs felt heavy, his tail drooped with exhaustion. The spirit circled, waiting, knowing it was only a matter of time. Then a voice cut through the night. Naruto! He turned, horror flooding through him. Mavis stood at the garden's entrance, her eyes wide, her face pale. She'd followed him. She'd come looking for him. She was in danger. Get back! Naruto shouted. Run! Don't! The spirit moved. Not toward Naruto. Toward Mavis. It crossed the garden in an instant, shadows reaching for her like hundreds of grasping hands. Mavis screamed, not in fear, but in surprise, and then the shadows were on her, wrapping around her, pulling her toward the massive eyes. And Naruto snapped. Later, he wouldn't remember exactly what happened. He would remember heat, more heat than he'd ever produced, more than he'd known he was capable of. He would remember flames that weren't blue anymore, but white, blinding white, consuming everything in their path. He would remember screaming, but not sure if it was him, or the spirit, or both. He would remember reaching Mavis through a wall of fire that should have burned her but didn't, pulling her free of shadows that dissolved at his touch, holding her against his chest while the world burned around them. He would remember the spirit's final scream, not of hunger this time, but of pain, of defeat, of something that had finally met something it couldn't consume. And he would remember darkness. He woke to warmth. Not the warmth of flames, but something softer. A blanket, maybe? Sunlight, real sunlight, not the filtered kind, on his face. And a voice, familiar, saying his name. Naruto? Can you hear me? He opened his eyes. Mavis leaned over him, her face drawn with worry. Behind her, he could see the garden, but different now. The plants were blackened, the stone paths cracked, the bench reduced to rubble. In the center of it all, he lay on a makeshift bed of cushions and blankets, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. The spirit, he croaked. Gone. Mavis's voice was soft. You destroyed it. Completely. There's nothing left. Naruto tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. Every muscle ached. Every bone felt like it had been replaced with lead. His tail lay limp beside him, the fur singed in places. How long? A few hours. It's almost dawn. Mavis hesitated. Naruto, what you did, the fire, it was incredible. And terrifying. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I. He closed his eyes. I lost control. I could have hurt you. But you didn't. I could have. His voice cracked. You shouldn't have come after me. You should have stayed safe. Mavis was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was firm. I came after you because I was worried. Because you ran out of the hotel in the middle of the night without telling anyone where you were going. Because... She stopped. Took a breath. Because you're my friend, Naruto. And friends don't let friends fight monsters alone. Naruto opened his eyes. Looked at her. Saw the truth of her words written in every line of her face. Friend, he repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. Heavy. Precious. Yes. Mavis smiled, though her eyes were bright with unshed tears. If that's okay with you. He thought about it. Thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the ways he could hurt her, all the spirits that would keep following him until the day he died. Thought about the garden, and the food, and the conversations that had made him feel, for the first time in years, like he wasn't completely alone. It's okay, he said. More than okay. Mavis's smile widened. She reached out and took his hand carefully, gently, like she was afraid he might break. Her skin was cool against his, but not unpleasantly so. Just different. Good, she said. Then we're agreed. They lay there together, vampire and fox spirit, as the first real sunlight Naruto had seen in days crept over the garden's broken walls. It touched Mavis's face, and she didn't flinch, just closed her eyes and let it warm her. You're not burning, Naruto observed. Special glass. Filters out the harmful parts. She opened one eye to look at him. My father's paranoid, not stupid. Naruto laughed. It hurt his chest, but he couldn't stop. That's actually funny. I have my moments. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the light spread across the garden. Naruto's strength was slowly returning, though he knew it would be days before he fully recovered. The spirit was gone, really gone, not just banished, and for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name. Safety? No. Not safety. Something else. Peace, maybe? Or the beginning of it. We should get you inside, Mavis said finally. Before my father panics. Too late for that. Both of them turned. Dracula stood at the garden's entrance, his expression unreadable. Behind him, a crowd of monsters had gathered. Frankenstein, his wife, the werewolf family, others Naruto didn't recognize. They stared at the destruction with wide eyes. Mavis moved instinctively, positioning herself between Naruto and her father. He saved me. The spirit was going to, he saved my life. I know. Dracula's voice was quiet. I felt it. The whole hotel felt it. He looked at Naruto, and for the first time, his eyes held something other than suspicion. That fire. That power. I've never encountered anything like it. Naruto met his gaze. Neither have I. I didn't know I could do that. Yet you did. To save my daughter. Dracula paused. Why? The question was simple, but Naruto understood its weight. Why risk yourself for someone you barely knew? Why burn yourself out for a stranger? Because she was kind to me, Naruto said. Because she saw me when everyone else looked away. Because, he swallowed. Because no one should face that kind of darkness alone. Dracula was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. You'll need time to recover. Days, maybe weeks. He glanced at the destroyed garden. And we'll need to rebuild. But for now, he extended a hand. Welcome to Hotel Transylvania. Truly welcome. Naruto stared at the offered hand. Then, with Mavis's help, he struggled to his feet and took it. Thank you, he said. Dracula's grip was firm, but not crushing. Don't thank me yet. We still have much to discuss. Your powers, for one. And what else might be following you? He released Naruto's hand and stepped back. But that can wait. For now, rest. You've earned it. As the monsters dispersed, murmuring among themselves, Mavis kept her hand on Naruto's arm, steadying him. See? She said quietly. Not so alone anymore. Naruto looked at her dark hair and pale skin and eyes that held centuries of loneliness. He was only beginning to understand, and felt something shift in his chest. Something that felt terrifyingly like belonging. No, he agreed. Not alone. Recovery was slower than Naruto wanted and faster than he expected. His body, pushed past its limits by the white flames, demanded rest in ways he couldn't ignore. For the first 3 days after the battle, he could barely leave his bed. Meals came delivered by silent staff members who avoided his eyes but left food that was always warm, always fresh. Mavis visited twice a day, morning and evening, sitting in the chair by his window and talking about nothing in particular until he fell asleep. On the 4th day, he managed to walk to the bathroom by himself. On the 5th, he made it to the dining hall for breakfast. The monsters still stared, but something had changed. The whispers were different now, not, "What is that thing?" but, "That's the one who saved Mavis, that's the one who burned the spirit, that's the fox who fought alone." Naruto's ears caught every variation, and while the attention still made his skin crawl, it was at least attention of a different kind. Dracula joined him halfway through the meal. "You're looking better." The vampire sat across from him, waving away a staff member who rushed over with a plate. "The color's returning to your face." "I'm a fast healer." Naruto took another bite of bread. "Kitsune thing." "Useful." Dracula's eyes studied him with that same assessing gaze, but the suspicion had faded into something closer to curiosity. "I've been researching. Reading old texts, consulting with guests who know about Eastern spirits. There's not much information." "I'm not surprised. Kitsune keep to ourselves mostly. Or we did before." He stopped. Shrugged. "Before." Dracula didn't push. Instead, he leaned back in his chair. "The spirit you destroyed. It was old. Very old. I felt its presence in this hotel for centuries, lurking in the spaces between walls. I tried to banish it myself, multiple times. Nothing worked. It was drawn to me." Naruto set down his bread. "They always are. Spirits, I mean. They sense something in me, the kitsune nature, maybe, or just the fact that I'm different, and they want it. Want to consume it, absorb it, become it. I don't fully understand." "And you've been running from them ever since?" "Fighting, mostly. Running when fighting fails." Naruto met Dracula's eyes. "I told you I'd bring trouble. This is what I meant." Dracula was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You could have left. After the first spirit attacked, you could have slipped away in the night, continued your wandering. Why didn't you?" Naruto thought about it. The answer surprised him with its simplicity. "Because Mavis asked me to stay." "That's it." "That's enough." Naruto's tail flicked. "She was the first person in years to treat me like I belonged somewhere. Not like a threat, not like a curiosity, not like something to be feared or studied. Just like a person. You don't walk away from that." Dracula's expression softened, just slightly. "No. I suppose you don't." They sat in silence for a while, two predators who had circled each other long enough to recognize mutual wariness transforming into something else. Not trust, exactly, but the beginning of it. She talks about you constantly, Dracula said eventually. Mavis. When she visits me, when we take meals together, when we walk the halls. It's always Naruto said this and Naruto did that, and did you know Naruto once fought a spirit in a tree full of squirrels? Naruto's ears heated. That was one time. She finds it charming. Dracula's lips quirked. I find it concerning. Not because of you, he added quickly. Because of her. She's never had a friend like this before. Someone her own age who sees her as more than the innkeeper's daughter. I see her as Mavis. Naruto frowned. Isn't that enough? For her, yes. For me, Dracula sighed. I've spent her entire life protecting her from the world. From humans, from dangers, from anything that might hurt her. And now you've shown up, destroyed a centuries-old spirit, and become her closest confidant in less than a week. Forgive me if I'm still adjusting. Naruto considered this. You're afraid I'll hurt her? I'm afraid you'll leave. Dracula's voice was quiet. That's worse. She's been left before, by her mother, by childhood friends who aged while she stayed young, by the simple reality of being immortal in a world that forgets. If you become important to her, and then vanish. He shook his head. I don't know if she'd recover. Naruto had no answer for that. Because Dracula was right, leaving was what Naruto did. It was what he'd always done, what he trained himself to do, what kept him and everyone around him safe. Stay too long, and the spirits followed. Stay too long, and the people who showed kindness got caught in the crossfire. But Mavis had already been caught. She'd been there in the garden, had almost died because of him. And she hadn't blamed him. Hadn't run. Hadn't done any of the things he'd come to expect. I don't want to leave, he said slowly. I've never wanted to stay anywhere before. But here. He gestured vaguely at the dining hall, the monsters, the impossible hotel. Here feels different. I don't know why. I don't know if it'll last. But I don't want to leave. Dracula studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. Good, he said. That's a start. The garden reconstruction became Naruto's unofficial project. He couldn't help much at first. His strength was still returning slowly, but he could sit on the edge of the work site and watch, offering suggestions when the workers asked about the plants he'd liked best. The monsters tasked with rebuilding were a mix of species, a troll who moved boulders with ease, several imps who handled the delicate work of replanting, and a ghost who'd apparently been a gardener in life and now supervised with enthusiastic commentary. Naruto liked them. They didn't stare at his ears or tail, or if they did, it was with casual interest rather than suspicion. The troll asked if his fur was as soft as it looked. It was, though Naruto didn't let him test the theory. The imps wanted to know if Kitsune could do tricks. They could, but Naruto wasn't about to demonstrate. The ghost, a woman named Margot who died in the 18th century and never quite moved on, spent hours explaining the ideal soil composition for the flowers she'd loved in life. On the 6th day, Mavis found him there as usual, sitting on a rebuilt section of wall and watching the work. You're becoming a regular fixture. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Margot says you're the best assistant she's ever had. I mostly just listen and nod. That's more than most people do. Mavis smiled. How are you feeling? Better. Stronger. He flexed his hands, watching the fingers curl. The flames are back to normal. Blue, not white. I think that's good. You think? I've never done what I did that night. Never lost control like that. He looked at his palms. It scares me, honestly. Not knowing what I'm capable of. Mavis was quiet for a moment. Then, my father says power isn't dangerous until you're afraid of it. The fear makes you hesitate, and hesitation makes you lose control. That's surprisingly wise. He's had centuries to collect wisdom. Most of it's useless, but some sticks. She bumped her shoulder against his. For what it's worth, I'm not scared of you. Even after seeing what you can do. You should be. A little. Probably. She smiled again. But I'm not. They watched the garden grow. Margot directed the imps with military precision. The troll carried a massive stone bench into place, and slowly, piece by piece, the destruction was transformed into something new. Can I ask you something? Mavis said eventually. Always. What do you want? Not just from the hotel, but generally. In life. What are you looking for? Naruto considered the question. It was one he'd asked himself many times, usually in the dark hours before dawn when sleep wouldn't come. The answers had changed over the years. When I first started traveling, I wanted revenge, he said. On the humans who'd driven me out, on the world that made me different, on everything that had hurt me. I wanted to prove I was strong, that I didn't need anyone, that I could survive on my own. And now? Now. He watched an imp carefully lower a flowering plant into fresh soil. Now I think I just want to stop running. To find somewhere that feels like home. To have people who see me and don't look away. He glanced at her. Is that stupid? No. Mavis's voice was soft. It's not stupid. It's the same thing everyone wants. Monsters, humans, spirits, we all just want to belong somewhere. Have you found it? Belonging? She thought about it. I have the hotel. I have my father. I have the guests, even the annoying ones. But belonging and being content aren't the same thing. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. Sometimes I wonder if there's more out there. Places I haven't seen, people I haven't met, experiences I'll never have because I'm too afraid to leave. You're not afraid of anything. Ha! The laugh was short, humorless. I'm afraid of everything. My father made sure of that. Every story he told me, every warning he gave, every time he pointed at the forest and said that's where the danger lies, it all added up. I'm 1,000 years old and I've never left this property. That's not bravery. That's a cage with comfortable bars. Naruto didn't know what to say. He understood cages, had lived in them his whole life, even while wandering. The cage of other people's expectations. The cage of his own fear. The cage of knowing that anywhere he stayed too long would eventually become dangerous. Do you want to leave? He asked. See what's out there. Mavis was silent for a long moment. I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me is terrified. And part of me thinks it doesn't matter, because I'll never actually do it. She looked at him. What's it like? Out there? Naruto thought about all the places he'd seen. The good, the bad, the terrifying, the beautiful. It's big. Bigger than you can imagine. There are cities that never sleep and forests that have never seen sunlight and mountains that touch the sky. There are people who'll hurt you for no reason and people who'll help you for even less reason. There's beauty and horror and everything in between. That's not an answer. It's the only answer there is. He met her eyes. It's whatever you make of it. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you. Your fears, your hopes, your memories, they all come along. So leaving doesn't fix anything. But it does show you that the world is bigger than your cage. Mavis stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. You're strange, she said. You know that? I've been told. Good strange. She leaned her head against his shoulder, just for a moment. I'm glad you came here, Naruto. Even with the spirits and the destruction and the almost dying. I'm glad. Naruto's heart did something complicated in his chest. He sat very still, not wanting to break the moment, not wanting to do anything that might make her pull away. Me too, he said quietly. They sat together as the garden grew around them, two immortals finding something neither had expected, and for a little while, the world felt almost peaceful. That evening, Naruto dreamed. Not the usual dreams, not the running dreams, not the burning dreams, not the dreams where faces from his past dissolved into shadows. Something different. Something softer. He dreamed of a forest, but not a forest he recognized. The trees were tall and silver-barked, their leaves glowing faintly in perpetual twilight. The air smelled of flowers and rain and something else, something ancient and familiar. And walking toward him through the trees was a figure he'd never seen but somehow knew. She was a kitsune. Not in the way Naruto was, hidden ears and tail, human shape otherwise. She was fully transformed, a fox the size of a horse with 9 tails sweeping behind her like living fire. Her fur was pure white, her eyes golden, and when she spoke, her voice was the rustle of leaves and the crackle of flames. Little one, she said, you've traveled far. Naruto tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't work. I'd been watching. Waiting. Wondering if you'd find your way. The great fox sat, her tails curling around her. You carry our blood, our fire, our loneliness. But you also carry something else. Something new. He found his voice. Who are you? A memory. A guide. A question you've never asked? She tilted her head. You've spent your life running from what you are. But have you ever wondered what you could become? I don't understand. No. You don't. She rose, and the forest seemed to brighten around her. But you will. When you stop running, when you find something worth staying for, when you learn that belonging isn't a place, it's a choice. Then you'll understand. Wait. Wake up, little one. Someone's calling you. Naruto woke to knocking. He was in his room, in his bed, sweat cooling on his skin. The dream was already fading, details slipping away like water through fingers. But the feeling of it remained, a warmth, a rightness, a sense that something important had been said even if he couldn't remember what. The knocking came again. Naruto? Are you awake? Mavis. He stumbled to the door, pulling it open. Mavis stood in the corridor, her face pale, her hands twisting together. Something's happened, she said. You need to come. It's Eliza. The ghost girl was fading. Naruto found her in the east wing, where they'd first met, pressed against the wall like she was trying to merge with it. Her form flickered constantly, solid one moment, transparent the next, and when she looked at him, her eyes held a terror he recognized. I'm disappearing, she whispered. The spirit you killed, it was holding something of mine. Part of me. When it died, that part died too, and now I'm. She flickered violently. I'm falling apart. Naruto knelt beside her. How do I stop it? I don't know if you can. Her voice was tiny. I've been here so long. I forgot what I was waiting for. I forgot why I stayed. But now that I'm leaving, I don't want to go. I'm scared. Mavis hovered behind him, her face drawn. There has to be something. Some way to anchor her. Naruto thought frantically. Kitsune lore, half-remembered stories from his childhood, things his human mother had told him before he left, before everything. Spirits, ghosts, the spaces between life and death. There were rules. There were always rules. Eliza, he said. What's your full name? She blinked. Eliza. Eliza Mariana Habsburg. Why? Do you remember where you were born? Vienna. I think. It's fuzzy. Do you remember your mother's face? Eliza's form steadied, just slightly. She had red hair. Like mine before I died. And she sang. Lullabies. I remember. Keep remembering. Naruto leaned closer. Think about her. Think about your home. Think about everything that made you, before you became just a ghost. Eliza's eyes closed. Her form flickered again, but differently this time, less frantic, more focused. She wore a blue dress. My favorite color. She'd let me braid her hair while she sang. The songs were about mountains, about rivers, about places she'd never seen but dreamed of. What else? The day I died. Eliza's voice wavered. I was lost. In the walls. I couldn't find the way out, and I got tired, and I fell asleep, and when I woke up, everyone was gone. I called for her. For my mother. But she never came. She couldn't hear you? She couldn't hear anything. She was dead too. I found out later. A sickness sweeping through the hotel. Everyone I knew died while I slept. And I woke up alone. Mavis made a small sound behind him. Naruto kept his focus on Eliza. But you're not alone now. We're here. I'm here. He reached out, slowly, and placed his hand on the wall beside her. Not touching, but close. You don't have to disappear. You don't have to fade. You just have to hold on to what makes you you. Eliza opened her eyes. They were brown now, not white, real, human, filled with tears that didn't fall because ghosts couldn't cry. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. Naruto's voice was fierce. You survived alone in these walls for centuries. You watched the hotel change around you, guests coming and going, life continuing without you. And you never stopped being Eliza. You never forgot who you were. That's strength. That's more strength than most living people have. Eliza stared at him. Her form flickered one last time, and then solidified, not completely, but more than before. Enough to be real. Enough to last. How did you know? She whispered. How did you know what to say? Naruto sat back on his heels. Because I've been where you are. Not dead, but alone. Forgotten. Fading into the background of my own life. The only thing that kept me going was remembering the people who were kind to me, the places that felt like home, the person I used to be before the world made me into something else. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled, a real smile, small and fragile but real. Thank you, she said. For seeing me. For remembering me. For making me remember myself. Naruto smiled back. That's what friends do. Behind him, Mavis let out a breath she'd been holding. When Naruto looked at her, her eyes were bright. What? He asked. Nothing. She shook her head. Just, you're remarkable. You know that? He didn't know that. He'd never known that. But looking at her, at the way she looked at him, he thought maybe he could learn. Later, after Eliza had drifted back into the walls, stronger now, more present, Naruto and Mavis walked the corridors together. You saved her, Mavis said. Just like you saved me. I talked to her. That's not saving. It is when the alternative is fading into nothing. Mavis stopped walking, turning to face him. Naruto, do you have any idea what you do to people? The way you see them, really see them, like they matter? That's not normal. That's not something most people can do. Naruto didn't know what to say. He never thought of himself as someone who saw people. He just paid attention. Listened. Remembered what it felt like to be invisible. It's just. He struggled for words. When you've been alone as long as I have, you learn to notice the other alone people. They're easy to spot, once you know what to look for. And you've been alone a long time. Yes. Mavis stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, close enough that he could feel the coolness of her skin. Not anymore. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a statement. It was a promise, offered quietly in a dark corridor, and Naruto felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked for years, something he'd been afraid to examine. Mavis. I'm not saying this because I expect anything. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the vulnerability underneath. I'm saying it because it's true. You're not alone anymore. You have me. You have Eliza, weirdly. You have my father, even if he won't admit it yet. You have a place here, if you want it. A place. A home. Belonging. All the things he'd been running toward without knowing it. I want it, he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. I want to stay. I want. He stopped. Swallowed. I want to stop running. I want to see what happens when I don't. Mavis smiled. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Then stay, she said, and find out. They stood there in the corridor, two immortals from different worlds, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future didn't look like something to fear. It looked like possibility. The announcement came at breakfast, delivered by Dracula with the theatrical flair of someone who had spent centuries perfecting his entrances. Next week, he declared, sweeping into the dining hall with arms spread wide. Hotel Transylvania will host its annual Monster Ball. A cheer went up from the guests. The werewolf pups howled. Frankenstein's monster lifted his wife in a triumphant spin. Even the normally stoic troll at the corner table cracked something that might have been a smile. Naruto, halfway through his breakfast, looked at Mavis. Monster Ball? Biggest event of the year. She was trying to look unimpressed, but her eyes gave her away, sparkling with barely contained excitement. Monsters come from all over. Dancing, food, music that doesn't stop until dawn. It's a lot. You've been before? Every year since I was old enough to stay up past midnight. She shrugged, aiming for casual. It's fun. Loud but fun. Dracula appeared at their table, materializing with the silent grace that still made Naruto's ears twitch. Mavis, I'll need your help with preparations. Seating arrangements, menu planning, guest lists, the usual chaos. Of course, father. And you? Dracula's eyes shifted to Naruto. You'll attend, of course. It wasn't quite a question. Naruto's tail flicked uncertainly. I'm not much of a dancer. Neither are half the guests. The Yetis just stomp in place, and everyone pretends it's choreography. Dracula's lips quirked. Consider it an opportunity. To meet more monsters, to see what we do when we're not fighting spirits too. He paused, something flickering in his expression. To belong. The word landed heavier than Naruto expected. He looked at Mavis, who was watching him with barely concealed hope. I'll think about it, he said. Dracula nodded and swept away to terrorize the kitchen staff about menu options. You'll come, Mavis said. It wasn't a question. You're very confident. I'm very hopeful, she smiled. And I think you'll like it. The ball, I mean. It's the one night of the year when everyone stops being afraid of everything and just celebrates. Being alive. Being monsters. Being together. Naruto thought about it. A room full of monsters, dancing and laughing and being themselves without fear. It sounded like something from a dream, or from a world he never quite believed existed. I'll come, he said. But I'm warning you now, I have no idea how to dance. Mavis's smile widened. Good thing I'm an excellent teacher. The week that followed was chaos of the best kind. Naruto had never seen the hotel come alive like this. Every corner bustled with activity, monsters polishing chandeliers that hadn't been touched in decades, witches brewing vats of glowing punch, imps stringing decorations from ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. The kitchen ran constantly, producing mountains of food that disappeared just as quickly into the mouths of hungry workers. And through it all, Mavis was everywhere. She directed guests with the ease of long practice, settled disputes between decorating committees, tasted every dish that came out of the kitchen, and still found time to drag Naruto into empty ballrooms for dancing lessons. Step. Together. Step. Together. She moved backward across the floor, her hands guiding his. You're thinking too much. I'm trying not to step on your feet. You're not going to step on my feet. Vampires are fast. We'll move. That's not comforting. She laughed, that real laugh he'd come to treasure, and pulled him through another sequence. Naruto stumbled, recovered, stumbled again. His tail kept getting in the way, wrapping around his own legs at the worst moments. But slowly, gradually, something resembling rhythm began to emerge. There, Mavis said. That's it. You're dancing. I'm shuffling awkwardly while holding on to you. Same thing for monsters. She spun him, and he only nearly tripped. You're a natural. You're a terrible liar. And yet you're still here. Naruto looked at her, at the way the candlelight caught her dark hair, at the smile that seemed reserved just for him, at the ease in her posture that hadn't existed when they first met. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm still here. They danced until Mavis declared him ready, which Naruto suspected meant tired of teaching, rather than actually ready. But when she pronounced him passable, he felt a small glow of pride anyway. The night of the ball arrived faster than anyone expected. Naruto stood in his room, staring at the outfit someone had left on his bed. Dark fabric, rich and formal, with subtle embroidery that shifted colors in the light. It was the nicest thing he'd worn in, ever, probably. His usual traveling clothes were practical, durable, invisible. This was none of those things. He put it on anyway. The fit was perfect. Someone had measured him while he slept, probably, which should have been unsettling but felt more like care. The jacket accommodated his tail with a hidden slit. The collar sat high enough to frame his ears without hiding them. When he looked in the mirror, he saw someone who looked like he belonged. That was the strangest part. He looked like he belonged. A knock at the door. Mavis's voice. Ready? He took a breath. Opened the door. She stood in the corridor wearing deep red, the color of aged wine, with subtle glitter that caught the light every time she moved. Her hair was different, pinned up in ways that showed the elegant line of her neck, with small jewels scattered through it like stars. She looked like a princess. She looked like everything. Oh, Naruto said. Mavis's eyes swept over him, and something in her expression shifted, softened, brightened, became something he couldn't name. Oh, she echoed. They stared at each other. You look, they said at the same time, then stopped, then laughed. I was going to say beautiful, Naruto managed. I was going to say like you actually listened to my dancing lessons. Mavis's smile was different now, shyer, warmer. But beautiful works too. You are. Beautiful, I mean. Not the dancing part. Though you're good at that too. I just. He stopped, ears burning. I'm going to stop talking now. Probably wise. She held out her hand. Shall we? He took it. Her skin was cool against his, but not unpleasantly so. Just. Mavis. Let's. The ballroom had transformed. Where normally the space sat empty or hosted smaller gatherings, tonight it blazed with light and color and noise. Chandeliers dripped with enchanted candles that never burned down. Streamers in every shade of deep purple and blood red cascaded from the walls. A band of specters played in the corner, instruments that produced music from another world, haunting and beautiful and impossible to resist. And everywhere, monsters. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. They filled the dance floor, crowded the balconies, spilled onto the terraces beyond. Naruto saw things he'd never imagined, creatures of shadow and light, beings that shifted shape with every step, entities that existed in dimensions he could barely perceive. And they were all laughing, all dancing, all celebrating. He stopped in the doorway, overwhelmed. Mavis's hand tightened on his. Breathe. I'm breathing. You're not. I can tell. She tugged him gently forward. It's a lot the first time. Just stay close to me. He stayed close. They moved through the crowd, and Naruto felt eyes on him, but different eyes than before. Curious, yes. Assessing, maybe? But not hostile. Not fearful. Just interested. A yeti waved. Naruto's ears twitched in response. That's Grog, Mavis said. He runs the mountain pass in. Nice guy, terrible breath. A group of witches nodded as they passed. Mavis nodded back. The Greystone Coven. They come every year. Last time, they accidentally turned the punch into acid. We're using a different recipe this time. A creature that appeared to be made entirely of mist drifted by, its form momentarily solidifying into something almost human before dissolving again. No idea what that is. Shows up every year, never speaks, seems to enjoy itself. We call it Gerald. Naruto laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising even himself. You named a mysterious mist creature Gerald? We name everything. It's easier than hey you all the time. Mavis guided him toward a quieter corner near the band. See? Not so scary. The monsters aren't scary. The dancing is scary. You've been practicing. I've been shuffling awkwardly while holding on to you. That's not dancing. Same thing. She turned to face him, still holding his hand. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. Naruto's heart did something complicated in his chest. I'll step on your feet. You won't. I'll trip. I'll catch you. Naruto. She stepped closer. Dance with me. He looked at her, at the confidence in her eyes, the trust in her smile, the way the candlelight made her look like something from a story. And he realized, suddenly, that he wasn't afraid. Not of dancing, not of the crowd, not of any of it. Because she was here. And somehow, that made everything possible. Okay, he said. Dance with me. They danced. It wasn't graceful. Naruto's feet still found ways to tangle with themselves, and his tail had opinions about the whole experience that manifested in occasional wrapping around his own legs. But Mavis was patient, guiding him through the steps with gentle pressure and quiet encouragement, and slowly, impossibly, it started to feel natural. The music shifted, slowed. Other dancers drifted closer, pairs and groups moving in patterns Naruto couldn't follow. He stopped trying. He just focused on Mavis, on the warmth in her eyes, on the way her hand fit in his. You're doing it, she said softly. Doing what? Dancing. Really dancing. He looked down. His feet were moving in something approaching rhythm. His tail had stopped interfering and started swaying with the music. And he wasn't thinking about any of it, just feeling, just being, just existing in this moment with her. I don't understand how this happened, he said. What? Any of it. Me here like this. He shook his head. A month ago, I was sleeping in caves and running from spirits. Now I'm at a ball. With you. Dancing. The words still felt strange. It doesn't seem real. Mavis's expression softened. It's real. You're real. This is real. How do you know? Because I've dreamed about things like this. About leaving the hotel, about seeing the world, about. She paused. About finding someone who looks at me the way you do. Naruto's heart stopped. The way I do? The way that says you see me. Not the princess, not Dracula's daughter, not the hotel heir. Just me. Her voice was quiet, meant only for him. No one's ever looked at me like that before. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to put into words what she made him feel, the safety, the warmth, the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found something worth staying for. So he didn't use words. He pulled her closer, gently, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Her head rested against his chest, her hair soft against his chin, and they moved together in the slow rhythm of the music. Around them, the ball continued. Monsters laughed and danced and celebrated. But for Naruto, there was only Mavis. Only this moment. Only the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, that the world had rearranged itself around them without either noticing. I'm glad you came here, Mavis whispered. To the hotel. To Transylvania. To this. Me too. I'm glad you stayed. Me too. I'm glad you're. She stopped. Lifted her head to look at him. I'm glad you're you. Naruto looked into her eyes, dark and deep and filled with something he was almost afraid to name, and felt the words rise in his chest. Words he'd never said to anyone. Words he'd never thought he'd have anyone to say them to. But before he could speak, a voice cut through the moment. Mavis! There you are! They turned. A young vampire stood nearby, flanked by two others, all three dressed in the height of monster fashion, all three looking at Mavis with expressions of delighted recognition. Mavis's face lit up. Lydia? Ren? Stefan? She pulled away from Naruto, but kept one hand on his arm. You came! Of course we came. The one called Lydia, tall, dark-haired, with an imperious tilt to her chin, swept forward to air-kiss both of Mavis's cheeks. The monster ball is the event of the century. We wouldn't miss it. Her eyes slid to Naruto, sharp with curiosity. And who's this? Naruto's ears flattened slightly under the sudden attention. This is Naruto. Mavis's voice held a warning note that made Lydia's eyebrows rise. He's a guest. And a friend. A guest. Lydia's smile sharpened. Interesting. I don't think we've seen you before. Where are you from? Far away, Naruto said. How far? Far enough. Lydia's eyes narrowed, but her smile stayed fixed. The two vampires behind her, Ren, who kept glancing at Naruto's tail, and Stefan, who seemed more interested in the punch bowl, shifted uncomfortably. Well, Lydia said, any friend of Mavis is a friend of ours. Isn't that right? She didn't wait for an answer. Mavis, we simply must catch up. It's been decades. Tell me everything. What have you been doing? Who have you been seeing? Why haven't you visited? Mavis hesitated, looking at Naruto. Go, he said. Catch up with your friends. I'll be fine. You're sure? He nodded, though something in his chest tightened at the thought of her leaving. I'll find something to eat. Maybe talk to Gerald the mist creature. Mavis laughed, some of the tension leaving her face. Don't let him absorb you. He does that sometimes. I'll be careful. She squeezed his hand once, then let go and let Lydia pull her toward a cluster of chattering vampires. Naruto watched her go, feeling the loss of her warmth like a physical absence. Then he turned to face the ball alone. An hour later, Naruto had learned several things. First, Monster Punch was delicious but apparently had side effects he hadn't anticipated. His vision kept shimmering at the edges, and his tail had started changing colors without his permission. Second, the Yetis were surprisingly good conversationalists once you got past the constant stomping. Third, Lydia was watching him. He noticed it about 20 minutes after Mavis left. The young vampire kept appearing in his peripheral vision, never quite approaching, never quite looking away. She positioned herself near the punch bowl, chatting with other guests while her eyes tracked his movements with an intensity that made his ears twitch. Naruto tried to ignore it. He talked to the Yetis. Grog was indeed a nice guy, and his stories about mountain pass weather were oddly fascinating. He sampled foods he couldn't identify. Most were good, some were actively moving, one tried to eat him back. He even had a brief, one-sided conversation with Gerald, who shimmered appreciatively when Naruto complimented his form. But Lydia kept watching. Finally, when Naruto had moved to a relatively quiet corner near the terrace doors, she approached. Naruto, right? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to apologize. For earlier. I was rude, and that wasn't fair to you or Mavis. Naruto's instincts prickled. The smile was wrong. The apology was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. But he'd been raised to give people chances, even when every sense screamed otherwise. It's fine, he said. You were surprised. I get it. So gracious. Lydia drifted closer, positioning herself between him and the exit. Mavis is lucky to have such an understanding friend. She doesn't have many, you know. Real friends, I mean. People who see her as more than just Dracula's daughter. I've noticed. It must be nice. Finding someone like that. Someone who sees you. Her eyes traveled over him, ears, tail, face, with an assessing quality that made his skin crawl. You're not like the other monsters here. I can tell. There's something different about you. Naruto's tail stilled. I'm a kitsune. Fox spirit. From the east. Kitsune. Lydia tasted the word. I've heard stories. Tricksters. Shapeshifters. Dangerous creatures if the stories are true. The stories aren't always true. No. She smiled again, sharper this time. They're not. But they're not always false either. The temperature in the corner dropped. Naruto felt it, a familiar chill, the kind that preceded spirits. But there was no spirit here. Just Lydia, and the two vampires who'd materialized behind her without a sound. What do you want? Naruto asked quietly. Want? Lydia's smile widened. I want to know what you are. Really are. Not the polite answers you give at dinner parties, not the careful explanations designed to make everyone comfortable. I want to know what Mavis has gotten herself mixed up in. That's not your business. It is when it affects my friend. Lydia stepped closer. I've known Mavis for centuries. I've watched her grow up, watched her father cage her, watched her accept it because she didn't know any better. And now you show up, a stranger, a mystery, something no one's ever seen before, and suddenly she's different. Happier. More confident. Talking about leaving the hotel, about seeing the world, about things she never mentioned before. That's a good thing. Is it? Lydia's eyes glittered. Or is it exactly what someone dangerous would want? Someone who needs her trust, her affection, her... Stop. Naruto's voice came out harder than he intended. You don't know me. You don't know what I want. And you don't get to decide what's good for Mavis. Lydia's expression flickered, surprise, maybe, that he'd pushed back. Then it settled into something colder. I decide what's good for my friends, she said. And right now, I'm deciding that you're a problem. The two vampires behind her moved. Fast, faster than Naruto expected. One grabbed his arms, the other his tail, and before he could react, he was pinned against the wall. Let me go. His voice stayed calm, but his flames flickered at his fingertips. Or what? Lydia leaned close. You'll burn me? In the middle of the ball, surrounded by witnesses? Go ahead. Show everyone what you really are. Naruto's flames died. She was right, he couldn't. Not here. Not now. Not without destroying everything he'd built. That's what I thought. Lydia's smile was triumphant. Listen carefully, Fox Boy. I don't know what you're playing at, but it ends tonight. You're going to leave. Quietly. Without saying goodbye to Mavis, without causing a scene, without any of your tricks. And if you don't... She leaned closer, her breath cold against his ear. I'll make sure everyone knows what you are. Not a guest. Not a friend. Just a monster, pretending to be something he's not. Naruto went still. The words hit deeper than they should have. Deeper than any threat, any violence, any danger. Because they were true. He was pretending. He'd been pretending his whole life. Pretending to be human, pretending to belong, pretending he could ever be anything other than what he was. A monster. Alone. Wrong. Naruto? The voice cut through the moment like light through fog. Mavis stood at the edge of the terrace, her face confused, then concerned, then, as she took in the scene, furious. Lydia! What are you doing? Lydia stepped back smoothly, her companions releasing Naruto so fast they might never have touched him. Mavis! We were just talking. Getting to know your friend. Talking. Mavis's voice was flat. While pinning him to a wall. He tripped. We were helping him up. Mavis. Naruto started. But Mavis wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Lydia with an expression he'd never seen on her face, cold, ancient, utterly still. It was the expression of someone who'd lived centuries, who'd learned patience and power in equal measure, who was done being underestimated. Lydia, she said quietly, I've known you for 400 years. We've played together as children, gossiped as adolescents, drifted apart as adults. And through all of it, I thought you were my friend. She stepped forward. But friends don't corner other friends in dark corners. Friends don't threaten people I care about. Friends don't. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Friends don't make the one person who's ever seen me feel like he has to leave. Lydia's confidence wavered. Mavis, you're overreacting. We were just... I know what you were doing. Mavis's eyes glittered. I know you, Lydia. I know your jealousy, your insecurity, your need to control everything around you. I've made excuses for it for centuries because I thought that's what friends did. But this... She gestured at Naruto, still pressed against the wall. This is too far. For a long moment, no one moved. The music played on, distant and uncaring. Monsters laughed and danced just feet away, oblivious to the tension in the corner. Then Lydia's expression shifted. The mask dropped, and underneath was something uglier, resentment, anger, the bitter recognition of defeat. Fine. She spat. Keep your pet fox. See where it gets you. She turned, gesturing to her companions. We're leaving. They swept away into the crowd, and suddenly Naruto and Mavis were alone in the corner, the chill of the confrontation slowly fading. Naruto's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, landing in a heap on the floor, his tail wrapping around him like a shield. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. And he couldn't stop it, couldn't control it, couldn't do anything but sit there and tremble while Mavis knelt beside him. Naruto! Naruto, look at me! He couldn't. He stared at the floor, at the cracks between stones, at anything but her. She was right. He whispered. About me. I am pretending. I don't belong here. I don't belong anywhere. I'm just a monster who... Stop. Mavis's hands cupped his face, gentle but firm, forcing him to look at her. Stop it! You're not pretending. You're not a monster. You're Naruto. You're the person who saved me from a spirit, who talked a ghost out of fading, who dances like he's never danced before and laughs when he trips. You're the person who sees me. Really sees me. And I. She stopped. Took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Naruto stared at her. His heart had stopped beating. His lungs had stopped working. Everything had stopped except her face, her eyes, the truth written in every line of her expression. What? He whispered. I love you. Mavis smiled, trembling, uncertain, but real. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how it happened. But it happened. And I needed you to know. Before Lydia or anyone else made you think you weren't worth loving. You are. You're worth everything. Naruto's eyes burned. Something hot and painful and wonderful cracked open in his chest, and he couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but sit there and let her hold his face and look at him like he mattered. I love you too, he said. The words came out broken, raw, nothing like he'd imagined. I think I've loved you since the garden. Since you brought me food and sat with me and asked questions like you actually wanted to know the answers. Since you saw me when everyone else looked away. Mavis's smile widened. Tears sparkled at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. So, she said, what now? Naruto thought about it. Thought about Lydia's threats, about the spirits that followed him, about all the reasons this was impossible. Thought about the garden, and the ball, and the way Mavis's hands felt against his skin. No, he said. We dance. He stood, pulling her with him. And there, in the corner of the ballroom, with monsters celebrating all around them and the music playing on, they danced. Not perfectly. Not gracefully. But together. And that was enough.